Welcome to the congregation of Yahweh in Panama City, Florida. Today is Yom Teruah. Today is the Feast of Trumpets. It's been going on since sundown last night, and Yahweh has commanded us to keep it. As a matter of fact, He commanded our nation to keep it, but our nation seems not to understand that. But we see a move in the power of Yahweh that He is bringing His nation back to His attention, or bringing the attention of the nation back to Him. Everything He does in His name. Yahweh is really serious about His name, and He puts it forth in everything that He does. Everything that He does it by His name and in His name. And so therefore, when we keep these feasts, we have justification to keep them because Yahweh has commanded to do them. It's not something that we have created ourselves as a tradition among our people, or as some religious tenets that we have outlined, but it is Yahweh and Yahweh's will. Should you speak the name of Yahweh? That's the question. The Yehudim have a problem with that because of tradition. And it goes all the way back to the carrying away into captivity, when Jeremiah was the prophet in the land of Yehudah, and he commanded the people to do things in the name of Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Yirmiyahu and told the king for him not to go to Egypt. He was bringing the Babylonians in the full might of their power under Nebuchadnezzar down on the nation of Yehudah, and Yahweh spoke and gave him this option. He says, if you don't go to Egypt, if you'll stand and see, I'll deliver you. But the king didn't do that. The king locked Yirmiyahu up and took the people to Egypt. And Yahweh destroyed them and Egypt, and carried the Pharaoh and the king of Yehudah into captivity. So, back to the question, should you speak the name of Yahweh? During that time, he told the king that he would take his name out of their mouth if they went to Egypt. And that has become a tradition and a problem for the Yehudim ever since. Many people do not understand what denigrates the name of the Creator. See, we have a commandment that says that you shall not take the name of Yahweh in vain. That means that we are not supposed to do anything that denigrates the name. Now, in some cases, people might think because they're humans and they're not righteous enough and they speak the name, somehow that will denigrate the name of Yahweh. But it does not. If you do not speak the name, his name has been brought to vanity because it is useless just by not speaking it. People who do things in the name of and make statements and swear in the name of, that is what he's talking about. If they do it in a unholy and rite, and in a frivolous rite, and in an obscene rite, then they're taking the name in vain. But see, we have to do what the Scripture says. Remember, the commandment says to keep it holy. Just what do you mean, keep it holy? Well, we're in the process of feast keeping. And the only way we can do it is by the order of Yahweh. And when Yahweh tells us to do something and we do it in His name, then we're keeping His name holy. This feast that we're talking about now is the feast that starts the fall feast off. It's the on the new moon, and it's commanded to be the Feast of Trumpets. It sends out a signal to Yahweh's people, and it establishes a date line for the other feasts to be numbered and come into proper order. And Yahweh gave Moshe the instruction on how to do that. The word name comes from the Hebrew word Shem, or Shem. And it's perhaps from the Strong's number 7760 through the idea of definite and conspicuous position. Compare an appellation. See, if you understand that the meaning of the appellation, that is an identity. A name on something is an appellation. So Yahweh's name to Him is an appellation. It can be to a human being too. But the point is, it identifies specifically. A name identifies. And if you call somebody by another name, it does not identify them. So you violate that rule. When you call Yahweh by some other name, you violate His rule. As a mark or a memorial. See, a name is a mark. You identify people with the name that they have, and it is their mark. And it goes on to be the individuality. By implication, it's an honor. Your name is the most precious thing you have, besides the one to give it to you, is your honor. It's a memorial, and it can be authority and character and base. See, if you can understand that your name should be important to you that way, because when you sign contracts and when you do business and commerce and you deal with people and you live in the culture, you want to keep your name elevated and respected. Well, Yahweh does too. Yahweh is the supreme. So His name is more important to Him than even all of ours put together. You see, so that's the reason it's important in keeping these feasts and honoring Him, is to understand His name. And when He gives us an order to do it, we have authority to do it and keep His character. You see, He started it off very early in creation, using name. And the first man that He created and his wife, Genesis 3:20, and Adam called his wife name Eve, Eva, because she was the mother of all living. And you see, in that simple time, when it sounds simple to us, it might have been more complicated than our mind can wrap around. But the point is, when he saw his wife, and he knew that she was born by creation and from his body, he called her name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. So therefore, she identified with something important. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, and called his name Seth. For Elohim, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. See, Seth's name was important. He was an appointment from Yahweh as another seed. He reestablished life on earth. And as far as we know, Cain lived until the flood, or Cain's progeny. But we don't know if any came across with Noah, because Noah and his 3 sons were the only ones that came across. The people on earth today, the 3 major groups of people, come from the sons of Noah. And there's not a 4th, not a 5th. Now there's intermarriages in different groups, and we have cultures where it seems like not numerous, but the 3 groups are in that. Now, we don't want to get into speculation, but the only way that Cain could have come through the flood, the spirit of Cain could come through the flood, is that one of those boys married a Canaanite descendant. And if it's so, then that's how Cain would be involved in the progeny on the earth today. But we don't know that. Nobody can prove it one way or the other. And when Seth was born, it says that then they began to call upon the name of Yahweh. It says in Genesis 4:26, so Seth, to him also were born a son, and they called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of Yahweh. And that was during the time, I think they call it the Antediluvian age. It was during the time before the flood. And the word call comes from the Hebrew word korah, and it's rather identical with number 7122, through the idea of accosting a person, to call out to. See, that is to properly address by name, but used in a wide variety of applications. But specifically, the name is important because they're identified. And when there were only those few people on the earth, names would be important. And they should be important today too. But anyway, we see that they called on the name of Yahweh. Yahweh was instrumental in directing their life, and they moved forward. And then we skip across the flood and skip across Noah's genealogy and come on down to, I think it's about 14 generations, and you can get the genealogy of that through the scripture. But it says Yahweh began to speak to Abram, Genesis 12:2. And when Yahweh spoke to Abram, there was many people walking around on the earth, because in 14 generations, with 3 major family stocks, that means that they can produce quite a few people, and they were scattered abroad on the earth. And Yahweh looked over the situation, looked over his creation, and then he picked out one to be specifically to build his righteousness in. And that's the purpose of humans today, is for Yahweh to build his righteousness in us. And it starts with Father And his name was Abram before he was renamed. In Genesis 12:2, he says, I will make thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. The greatness of Abraham's name is a blessing to the population of the earth. He is even a blessing to those people who are called Muslims today. He is in the genealogy. They're not Cainites per se. They might have a Cain spirit because of their attitude, just like other people has got a Cain spirit, and they're willing to kill. Cain was a murderer, and it seems that spirit has manifested itself. And in verse 8 of Genesis 12, and he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent. And Bethel means house of El. Bet-El is house of El. And that was an area that probably Yahweh had an affinity for, and the people recognized that, and they called the area Bethel. And he pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east, and there he built an altar unto Yahweh and called upon the name of Yahweh. And see, we build an altar and call on the name of Yahweh when we have a prayer life with Yahweh. Our altar is the time that we bow and the place we bow and the attitude that we bow. Anyway, we call on the name of Yahweh. And so, in feast keeping, that gives us an opportunity to call on the name of Yahweh collectively with other people. And we have a harmony together. But the point is, he was specifically pointing out to Abram to have a specific nation to be a blessing to the world. And he made that statement. He said that if you curse Abraham, you'll be cursed. If you bless Abraham, you'll be blessed. Any nation, any group, any individual that practices that with the name of Abraham, they will either be cursed or blessed, because Yahweh established it that way. And when we recognize that Yahweh is the El that produced righteousness in Abram, and that's his mission to do for the descendants of the people, we can see that the righteousness that we express is our belief in what Yahweh commanded us to do. And the way we exercise our belief is by keeping his feast. If you believe that Yahweh is, you have to believe that Yahweh said to keep the feast, so therefore it's right for you to keep the feast. It's not some Jewish custom that we don't have to do anymore. It's not some custom of the people that we don't have to do. Yahweh says do it, and when we exercise our belief, it becomes our righteousness, just like Abraham's righteousness. So therefore, we need to call on the name of Yahweh. And in Genesis 13:4, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abram called on the name of Yahweh. He specifically set his altar time, his prayer time, in a position where it would be identified, and he consistently went to prayer and he called on the name of Yahweh. And it goes on through from generation to generation. And then in Exodus chapter 6 and verse 3, he's speaking to Moshe, and he's looking back over, and here's what he says to Moshe in Exodus 6 and 3. And I appeared unto Abram, unto Yitzchak, and unto Yaakov by the name of El Shaddai. And see, that word El Shaddai means the Mighty One. That's what it means. El Shaddai. But by my name Yahweh I was not known to them. Now he withheld his name Yahweh from them for some reason, but it was in the plan for him to reveal it to his nation. In Exodus chapter 9 and verse 16, and in every deed for this cause have I raised thee up, for to show in thee my power, that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. And it appears like that Moses was the one that established the pronunciation of the name. And the reason that he wanted to do it is he's going to declare it throughout all the earth. And he's going to show his power. And see, we're, as a population of people on the earth, are contrary to Yahweh right now. Every nation on the earth is contrary to Yahweh. And they do little things that I think would irritate him. And he allows problems to come on them. And everywhere we look, we have problems with the people. But he sets up a provision. There is a provision when we begin to call on his name, humble ourselves and pray and seek his face and repent, he is going to heal our land. And when he heals our land, he is going to expect us to honor his name. He's going to expect us to keep his feast as an identity, because the feasts are Sabbath days. The first feast is the weekly Sabbath. And he commanded us to do that. And how do we keep the weekly Sabbath? We keep it in his name. It's no good to just take a day off on Saturday or one day and call it Sabbath. If we don't do it in his name, it's a wasted day for you and him. So therefore, we have to combine this name and the commandment together in order for him to show his power among the world. Exodus 15 and in verse 3. Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. Now, they talk about wars, and they talk about wars to come, and we're in wars now, and we've had wars ever since we was big enough to know what wars is all about, and we can read the collected histories of wars, and we know that mankind has wasted his entire presence on this earth constantly in war. And most of the time, whether he realized it or not, he was in conflict with Yahweh. He's been at war with Yahweh. Well, Yahweh is a warrior, so he fights back. He is Yahweh of hosts. And the word host comes from the Hebrew word sabah, which means armies. Yahweh of armies. And he has an army. He has an army that he can accomplish anything he wants. But he's making a special effort to build an army out of the human beings to preserve the righteousness on this earth. See, the angels that's in his army are servants that move at his command. He could change the entire history of the whole universe, and nobody would be alive to know it or prove it or even hear it or think about it again, and it would be in a whole different vein with the number of angels he has in his spiritual army. We can't even imagine what he can do. But he has his attention still on his covenant he made with Abraham, that he gave to the human race for Abraham to be their father. Not only the father of the people that was born to him, but he was the father of the people that lived on the land. because he was given the land in the covenant for the righteousness of Yahweh, to show Yahweh's power. And when we understand that, we can see what kind of work he's doing in this time. He is doing a grand work with the people. And whether we realize it or not, he's going to save the people. He's going to save them for his glory, and not some ethereal idea that you got to just make it over into heaven because you got a soul that don't die. You see, that's the wrong interpretation that the people have put in the world. Yahweh has a grand purpose for his people. He loves Abraham, and he loves every seed of Abraham. He told Abraham that his seed would be as the sand of the sea and the stars of the heaven, and they would be multiplied and they would be fruitful. If we could just think about the fruitful, if everybody shared what Yahweh gave us, there would be no problems on this earth. We'll never run out of resources. No matter what an environmentalist tells you, we will never run out of a resource. We won't even dry one up enough to where it could be listed as endangered, because Yahweh created this thing and he fixed it where it works. We have a little problem right here in Bay County that it's laughable, and the people that got involved in it should be laughing stocks and be run out of town. But you know, the license bureau and the board, where when you get ready to build a house, you got to get permits to build a house, and you, in order to utilize your land, you got to comply with all of these rules. And there's an environmental rule that cropped up through, not by the specific law, but by order of the way they organize to do business. And they come up with a crawfish called Panama City crawfish. Have you ever heard of the Panama City crawfish? Well, if you got one on your property, you can't build on it. It's environmentally sensitive property, and you can't build it if you got a Panama City crawfish. Now, if you've ever got into a ditch when you was working around your house and you saw a little crawfish swimming in there when there's water in there, that's a Panama City crawfish. But when it don't rain now, you can go out there and you can stay in that ditch 24 hours a day for a whole year, and if it don't ever rain, you won't never see another crawfish there. And you can go out there and fill the ditch up with water, and in 3 days you'll have crawfish back there. How did they get there? But see, the point is, people take things in vain. They run other people's life with stuff that don't amount to a hill of beans. But Yahweh has the power to bring those crawfish back, and the way he does it, when they lay their eggs, it goes into the sand and they lay dormant through a drought. When the rain comes back, they reignite and they come up and grow. That's the way the Serengeti, the biggest land foraging area on earth, where all of the animals of Africa eat on the Serengeti, it goes dry sometimes and it don't bear anything. And as soon as he causes it to rain, it starts feeding millions of animals. We'll always have plenty of resources. It don't make any difference. And so we don't need to get out of shape. We just need to get in line with Yahweh and honor his name, keep his Sabbaths, keep his feast, and practice righteousness by believing in him, and let him accomplish the work. That's what we need to do. And then we go Exodus 23 and 13. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect. Now this is what he is talking to the people about. Now, and this is what, when you read this like it's supposed to be in context, it's Yahweh speaking to us. He's talking to a human being. And it's what we are supposed to do. And then we go to the next portion, and it says, and make no mention. Be very circumspect and make no mention of the name of other gods. Don't call them by other name. Don't exercise their authority in any fashion for the love of, you've heard that. That's idle talk. They're not being circumspect. You have to understand that Yahweh is in charge, and when we make a statement in the name of Yahweh, we better be circumspect and know what we're doing. We don't take his name in vain. We don't use his name to curse people. There's people that say he's going to judge you because they got something wrong with your way of thinking, or they might have something against you. That's not being circumspect, and we don't do that. And he says, neither let it be heard out of your mouth. So therefore, we have to be real circumspect about how we talk about what Yahweh will do for the people. And basically, what he's doing, and they can't see it, and we can't hardly see it, is that he is saving the people on this earth for his purpose. He's done more to save the people than the people even realize, and they don't even think about, because we do not keep the feast and learn from the feast like we should. We're coming to that, and we're going to, one day he's going to lead us to it, and one day we'll see the whole population of people stand up and worship him like he wants us to do, but he's calling out a few to start with. And then the word zakar, in its primitive root, is properly to mark, so as to be recognized. That is, to remember. A zakar. Today is a zakar. And I think they specifically call it the zikaroon, coming from the root zakar, which means a day to remember, or a thing to remember, or a place to remember. Your name is a memory. Yahweh's name is a memory. It's a memorial. By implication, to mention, also as diminutive from to be a record. See, a book that records a memory. This is a memory of what Yahweh is doing for his people. This book is in that same form as Zechariah. The day that we keep as a feast is a memory, and that's the way we keep it. We don't have ceremonies that we can set up and establish and do it by certain times and all in the days that is commanded, and let it be whatever it is, whether it's Trumpets, Day of Atonement, or whether it's Sukkot or Passover. It's a memorial, and that's how we come to understand it. In Exodus chapter 34 and verse 14, for thou shalt worship no other El, for Yahweh, whose name is jealous, is a jealous El. Now this right here is a simple term. We're not supposed to worship any other El. Now, how do we accomplish this? We do it by memorializing his commandment. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it set apart. Keep it Kodesh. Keep it holy. So therefore, in memory, you keeping the Sabbath day, and you do that every week. And then as time progresses, we do the feast days that way, and it's a memorial. And it also, when we think about Yahweh, we recognize His name and how we glorify His name. It's a memory. It's in our mind. It's in our heart. It's in our belief. And when we believe, it's accounted unto our righteousness. Abraham believed Yahweh, and it was accounted unto him as righteousness. And that's the pattern that he wants us to look at things about. In Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 12, and you shall not swear by my name falsely. See, we're not supposed to swear by His name. And we definitely should not swear by other deities. Even if we don't even know their names, we're not supposed to swear by a deity. And a lot of deities come up that people worship and don't even realize they're doing it. They worship ideas, they worship governments, they worship churches, they worship physical things. They worship the land they walk on. The environmentalist is great at worshiping the land. They're going to save it for the progeny of the future peoples. See, he said, don't do anything falsely in His name. Don't swear by His name falsely. He says, neither shall you profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahweh. And when He signatures it, I am Yahweh, that means that we are supposed to take it seriously. We have nothing to swear by. Numbers 6 and 27. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Now, you see, if you want to know who you are, you need to think about your genealogy and where you come from. And when you look at the backtrack of the where our ancestors come from, and you realize that historically we have records of a migration of people that come from right where Yahweh was speaking to Moses, telling him this. We can track everybody on the earth back to that point, just about. In Deuteronomy 6 and 13, he says, thou shalt fear Yahweh, your Elohim, and serve Him, and shalt swear by His name. Now this sounds like a contradiction, but this swearing is when you fear Him and you serve Him. Like Yeshua swear by the name of Yahweh, and he said to the people, I come to do the will of my Father. I did not come in my own name. You see, he learned how to swear by the name in righteousness. So therefore, it behooves us to swear by His name in righteousness, but not in the physical. Don't swear in the name of Yahweh that somebody's going to get killed for because he done you a harm. It's not necessary. Yahweh will take care of the people that does that. In Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 10, and all people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of Yahweh, and they shall be afraid of you. You see, when we are walking by the name of Yahweh, when we are keeping the Sabbath day and we're keeping the feast days, the people look at us strangely. And when they really understand it, they become afraid. And when people do righteousness, even if it's not pure righteousness, if it's just a little bit righteous. We'll take the Tea Party, for instance. The Tea Party is trying to get some governmental laws passed to protect the people. The ingrained politicians is trying to tax the people and take the rights away and take the land away and take everything away. And see what has happened when the Tea Party's people gets up to speak, the rest of the people are afraid of them. Because Yahweh has given them that spirit of fear. And when Yahweh's people really stand up for the name of Yahweh and say, we're going to make this nation keep the feast because we are descendants of Abraham, they will really be afraid of us. And people talk with a lot of fear about these Muslims. The Muslims are our brothers when you go back to Ishmael, and they're going to be afraid of us if they don't get on the right pattern. If they don't repent and come to Yahweh as a stranger and circumcise their heart and take the Passover, they're going to be afraid. So we don't have to worry about physical things when we understand what He is trying to do with the people. He wants us to walk in the path that Yahweh has chosen. He wants us to keep His commandments. We want to start with the first one and have no other elves before Him. Go to the second and don't build anything that becomes an el to you. Don't carve no dolls and bow down and worship them. Don't build no houses, churches, land, schools, governments, or whatever, and bow down and worship it. That's what He's trying to get the people to realize. He says, if thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this Torah, this law, which I have written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, Yahweh your Elohim. See, He wants us to fear Him. He is a glorious Elohim. He wrote the words in the book, but the people don't read the book. Now they read around it, they read over it, they mimic the letters, but when you read a subject, you learn the subject and the subject speaks to you. Deuteronomy 32:3. But I will publish the name of Yahweh, ascribe ye greatness unto our Elohim. See, we publish the name of Yahweh. And these little congregations that's doing that, we're not up here just wasting our time. And we're not building something for ourselves. We never ask for donations. We never try to worry people about anything like that. All they need to do is begin to keep the Torah. Begin to hear and understand what Yahweh is doing. Begin to let His righteousness grow into your being, and you begin to look like Yahweh, and you begin to believe like Abraham, and you begin to receive His righteousness. The rest of the world will fear you. We're not even supposed to worry about angels. In the book of Judges, one of the characters there encountered an angel. And he asked him something, and the angel says, and the angel said, it's Judges 13 and 18, if you want to write it down and research it. And the angel of Yahweh said unto him, why askest thou thus after my name? What do you want to know my name for? Seeing it is a secret. We can't know the names of the angels. It's a secret. And it's Yahweh's secret. So nobody should even ask which angel come to you. What was his name? If Yahweh didn't write his name in the book, you won't never know his name. In 1 Samuel, and see, he deals with the characters in the Bible in ways to where it makes it personal. And here's what he said in 1 Samuel chapter 17 and 45. Then said David to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. See, here is this warrior who was considered Goliath the giant. He was a full man of war, and he had all the armament that he needed. And David told him about it. And he says, but I come to you in the name of Yahweh of hosts. The Elohim of the armies of Israel See, there is one who manages the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. See, when you stand up and defy Yahweh's army, you're not really defying the army per se, you're defying the owner of the army. See, and Yahweh is principal. Verse, 2 Samuel, chapter 7, verse 13. He shall build a house in my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. This is Yahweh speaking to the throne when he inspired them to build a house. And it took 2 generations to build a house. But it established that throne forever. And it's still in full force and effect. A lot of people look at it like a fairy tale and like some ancient history, and there's too many gaps in it, and there's too many people done things that sounded more important, so it's very insignificant. But when you look at what the statement is made, the establishment of the throne that Yahweh established, it is forever. That means it's going to transcend the physical and go into the spiritual and still be in rulership from now on. And then skip down to verse 23, same chapter. And what one nation in the earth is like thy people? What nation is like the people of Yahweh? See, now the government of America is not Yahweh's government, per se. But the people are his people. And he knows where every one of them are. He knows the hardships they're going to go through with. He knows the tests that they're going to take. And he probably knows how they're going to answer the questions when they take the test. But who is like, even like Israel, whom Yahweh went to redeem for a people to himself? Think about that. Who are we? We're the people that he went to redeem. And to make him a name. Yahweh's name is in his people. The word Israel. Do you know what it means? Israel, he shall judge as El. Yahweh makes him a judge. He's very important. And to do for you great things and terrible. Yahweh's people is going to do magnificent things. Terrible don't necessarily mean bad. It means good, big, large. Terrible would be that we would expand this population on to other planets. We don't know that. But whatever Yahweh does with his people, it's great and it's terrible. For thy land before thy people, which thou redeemest to thee from Egypt, from the nations and their gods. See, he put their gods down. And he redeemed his people from Egypt. Now go to verse 26. He says, and let thy name be magnified forever, saying, Yahweh of hosts is the Elohim over Israel. Yahweh of hosts is the Elohim over Israel. And let the house of thy servant David be established before thee. Now, one would say, well, we don't have a king in Israel now. He did. We don't have somebody to come down here and tell us how to walk. But you just look. He said he established it forever. But when you understand that ministry that happened about 2,000 years ago, and what he did, and when he died, And when he resurrected and he went to the throne of Yahweh and set the throne of Yahweh, his throne is established forever, and it's over Israel. Wherever Israel is. If they're the little people called Yehudim that live in the place with the name Israel over the door in Palestine, Yahweh is great over them. And the people that he scattered throughout every nation, all of the rest of the 12 tribes, wherever they might be, Yahweh is great over them. He has established them. He said in 1 Kings 5:5, "And behold, I propose to build a house unto the name of of Yahweh, my Elohim, as Yahweh spoke unto David my father." And see, this is a repetition of Solomon getting in on that same promise. And Solomon's descendant, who is Yahshua HaMashiach, he fulfilled this throne and he established it where it will never come down. We know that. And we keep these feasts by obedience to perfect our righteousness, because we obey what he says do, and we let Yahweh lead us into the way that he wants us to be, to grow into the nation that he wants us to be. And see, this was a metaphor too, showing that Yahweh did it through his son. Because here's what he said. I'm going to read it to you again. 1 Kings 5:5. "And behold, I propose to build a house unto the name of Yahweh my Elohim, as Yahweh spoke unto David my father, saying, Thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne in thy room, he shall build a house unto my name." Yahweh could have very well said, "My son, Yahshua, whom I set on the throne, he has built a house, and his house are his people." We are the house of Yahshua HaMashiach. First Kings 8:17. "And it shall be in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of Elohim, Yahweh of Israel." See, it's in the heart. Yahweh put it in David's heart. He put it in Solomon's heart. And he's putting it in the hearts of the people that are believers. When you read these words, and these words speak to you, they're Yahweh talking to you. You are Israel because you understand it. Now, if you ignore it, or if you can't understand it, it might not be for you. But that's the way you understand the Scripture. You read it, you study it, you practice it. And if it's for you, then you are heir to it. You have inherited it. Of course, he has to chastise his people along the way. In 1 Kings chapter 9:7, he says, Then will I cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them, and this house shall I have hallowed for my name will I cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people. It would behoove Israel to wake up and receive their inheritance, because they can be cut off too. And in 2 Chronicles 7:14, "If my people," and this is the one that Israel needs to hear today. This is the one that would be America's salvation right now in the political and the economical and in the social world of this earth, this country right now. If we would learn this prayer and do it just like the Scripture says, he would straighten this country up. 2 Chronicles 7:14, "If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, Then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Think about that. Yahweh has given this nation a promise. Yahweh has given this nation an out. All we have to do is start thinking about what's going on and begin to see how to worship Yahweh. Turn away from the paganism that's involved in our society. Get our hearts and our minds back on Him and let Him bring forth. He gave us a promise. He gave us the work. I'm going to read two little verses here, and then I'll give the conclusion. Nehemiah 9 and 7. Nehemiah 9 and 7. Thou art Yahweh the Elohim, who didst choose Abram, and brought him forth out of Ur of the Chaldee, and gavest him the name of Abraham. See, it's told about in prophecy. He was a prophet. And foundest his heart faithful before thee. That's what Yahweh wants to find right now, is the people's heart is faithful. If we have a faithful heart, He'll begin to open this to us. He says, and madest a covenant with him to give the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Jebusites, and the Girgashites, to give it, I say, to his seed, and hast performed thy words, for thou art righteous. See, the righteous people is one that's going to inherit the land. It's in this land right here. It's going to eventually be inherited by the righteous people. The unrighteous people is going to lose it. It would behoove them to start seeing. But now here is the seal that He put on it. Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon His shoulder. That's where the government needs to be today, and not scattered around amongst all of these different individual agencies trying to build kingdoms for themselves. It needs to be recognized as where the government is. He said, and His name shall be called Wonderful. How good can you get? Counselor, the Mighty El, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. That is the title of our Savior, who gave Himself for this inheritance. And He's not going to lightly esteem this inheritance. Now, people can look around and say how bad people are and how bad this is and that, but Yahweh has an affinity for His inheritance, and He has made provision for His inheritance. In Isaiah 12 and 4. And in that day shall you say, praise Yahweh. See, this is where we need to speak His name. Praise Yahweh.
In everything.
Call upon His name. His name is important. Declare His doing among the people. Make mention that His name is exalted. So when you say somebody that you meet in public, Yahweh bless you, you're accomplishing what this says. You are bringing His word to fruition. We need to call on His name and recognize who we are. May Yahweh bless and keep you in His name. Baruch